taking care of mom and dad. Today we have Sira from, I hope I say this right, Boyd's Memory Method.
Very good try. It's a hard one for the tongue, for the American tongue. Boat's memory method is good,
Boats.
but
Okay.
in Dutch it's Botes, but Boat's
Oh, I
memory
like
method
that.
works.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Jan, for inviting me, and it's always a pleasure to share thoughts with like-minded people and people that has a passion for dementia care as yourself. My name is Sira Botes. I'm an occupational therapist and a dementia specialist of 30 years. I started out as a hand therapist, which means I'm a very practical, solution-focused individual. And I landed in home care 12 years ago. And this just immediately stirred my heart when I realized how many of our population is struggling with dementia or on this dementia journey. Not only the persons that we're serving through home care, but also their caregivers. And as someone that came from a profession where I had solutions for every problem, it was just heartbreaking and frustrating for me that I couldn't offer families or even the person living with dementia concrete solutions. So that's where my passion started in seeking a way to solve, not really solve the problem because we're never going to solve it, right? But
Right.
to provide a roadmap on which we can make decisions as clinicians, but then also as caregivers and the person on the dementia journey, so that we all can speak the same language, have the same expectations on how do we move forward, have joy. I love, Jana, how you also focus on joy and how when we're engaged with each other or with our environment and it's purposeful and it makes sense to us, that it creates joy. And that's what we're after, right? As human beings, we're
Yeah.
not going to go back to something if we have the choice, if it's not
Right.
joyful, right? We may if we absolutely have to, like the dentist. Sorry to all
Yeah.
dentists, but we will be more likely to return to environment or to a relationship if it's something that creates joy within us. And so that's what I wanted. My passion was to continue to provide caregivers and persons on this dementia journey with joyful connections.
And that's beautiful, the joyful part, because we see a lot. I had mentioned to you, working in the hospitals and home care. When families find out about this, it's very fearful. It's a fearful
Yes,
thing. They don't understand it. Many of them don't have the medical knowledge behind it, and even if you do, it can be a scary thing. So then the families, we all tend to focus on that part of it, and then trying to figure out the other part that we actually miss, that you have this window and you want it to be joyful for them through that period
yes,
of time. And I
yes.
just love that you bring that out.
Well, thank you. Yes, that with the Boat's memory method, what I realized were that as healthcare providers, it's easy for us to put a diagnosis on a situation, right? First of all, we can bill for it. We need to bill the insurance company. So we need to have a pathway to tell the insurance company what we're doing. So now we have to have a diagnosis. But a lot of times, because dementia is such a complex situation, um, I found that yes, we have all these tests and abilities to get to that diagnosis, but we lack a roadmap. We lack
Mm.
a bridge to connect the diagnoses with solutions, to connect the diagnoses with expectations and interventions. So what does this journey even look like, right? That's what we lacked. So through the Boat's memory method, I hope to build a bridge for everybody involved from the diagnosis to have a roadmap with some road signs on this is what we need to do for this person. This is how we set up their environment. This is how we're going to talk to them. This is how they process information. This is what's going to go wrong if we do not support them in the correct way. And so I created the Boat's analysis of functional cognition, which is a clinical assessment tool.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Jan, for inviting me. And it's always a pleasure to share thoughts with like-minded people and people that has a passion for dementia care as yourself. My name is Sira Botes. I'm an occupational therapist and a dementia specialist of 30 years. I started out as a hand therapist, which means I'm a very practical, solution-focused individual. And I landed in home care 12 years ago. And this just immediately stirred my heart when I realized how many of our population is struggling with dementia or on this dementia journey. Not only the persons that we're serving through home care, but also their caregivers. And as someone that came from a profession where I had solutions for every problem, it was just heartbreaking and frustrating for me that I couldn't offer families or even the person living with dementia concrete solutions. So that's where my passion started in seeking a way to solve, not really solve the problem because we're never going to solve it, right? But
Right.
to provide a roadmap on which we can make decisions as clinicians, but then also as caregivers and the person on the dementia journey, so that we all can speak the same language, have the same expectations on how do we move forward, have joy. I love, Jana, how you also focus on joy and how when we're engaged with each other or with our environment and it's purposeful and it makes sense to us, that it creates joy. And that's what we're after, right? As human beings, we're
Yeah.
not going to go back to something if we have the choice, if it's not
Right.
joyful, right? We may if we absolutely have to, like the dentist. Sorry to all
Yeah.
dentists, but we will be more likely to return to environment or to a relationship if it's something that creates joy within us. And so that's what I wanted. My passion was to continue to provide caregivers and persons on this dementia journey with joyful connections.
And that's beautiful, the joyful part, because we see a lot. I had mentioned to you, working in the hospitals and home care. When families find out about this, it's very fearful. It's a fearful
Yes,
thing. They don't understand it. Many of them don't have the medical knowledge behind it, and even if you do, it can be a scary thing. So then the families, we all tend to focus on that part of it, and then trying to figure out the other part that we actually miss, that you have this window and you want it to be joyful for them through that period
yes,
of time. And I
yes.
just love that you bring that out.
Well, thank you. Yes, that with the Boat's memory method, what I realized were that as healthcare providers, it's easy for us to put a diagnosis on a situation, right? First of all, we can bill for it. We need to bill the insurance company. So we need to have a pathway to tell the insurance company what we're doing. So now we have to have a diagnosis. But a lot of times, because dementia is such a complex situation, um, I found that yes, we have all these tests and abilities to get to that diagnosis, but we lack a roadmap. We lack
Mm.
a bridge to connect the diagnoses with solutions, to connect the diagnoses with expectations and interventions. So what does this journey even look like, right? That's what we lacked. So through the Boat's memory method, I hope to build a bridge for everybody involved from the diagnosis to have a roadmap with some road signs on this is what we need to do for this person. This is how we set up their environment. How this is how we're going to talk to them. This is how they process information. This is what's going to go wrong if we
Right.
do not support them in the correct way. And so I created the Boat's analysis of functional cognition, which is a clinical assessment tool, analysis of functional cognition to help clinicians establish the true baseline of a person's neurocognitive status. So we're not focused on a diagnosis. We really don't even care what your diagnosis is, other than we will take that into consideration
Mhm.
because, of course, diagnosis give us important information. but the diagnosis does not tell us what that person needs to have a
Exactly.
meaningful and a quality life. But through the Botes analysis, we look at executive function. We determine where is the breakdown and how much cognitive barriers and how many cognitive strengths do this person have. Instead of arriving at a number, which a lot of tests do, right? We created stages. The first is the Lily, which is early neurocognitive decline. The second is the Daisy, which is mild neurocognitive decline. The third is the Violet, which is moderate neurocognitive decline. Then we get the Rose, which is severe neurocognitive decline. And then the bouquet is advanced neurocognitive decline.
Yeah.
And then we use that flower roadmap to educate the caregivers, to connect the families with where is your person at? How do we meet them where they're at on this journey? How do we prevent further decline? How do we support what they have so that they can remain there for as long as possible? So age and place, right? But the
Mhm.
most important thing is what can we do as caregivers and even as a person living with dementia to remain meaningfully engaged. And so
Exactly.
we look at that cognitive barriers and strengths, and we recommend solutions to allow that person to feel valued, feel connected, and
Right.
be able
Mm.
to connect with the environment, with other people, with activities that they still want to be involved with, and to still find joy.
Exactly. And I think a lot of family members, like I said, um, this is all a new road. This is all a new journey for them.
Yes.
So what the system that you're creating is amazing because a lot of times we focus on the medical part of it. We go to the doctor's appointments. They automatically, not that they mean to, but a lot of, and I know you know that a lot of it is medications, certain things that they just focus on, and you really miss that connection between between the individual, between the family members, and when I looked at your website and the program that you're providing, you really focus on that, and you're able to understand the different levels of it, which is amazing.
Well, thank you. Yes, I think that, as healthcare providers, we get trapped in a few different things. We get trapped in the limitations of the insurance company. We get trapped in the limitations of the diagnosis and the diagnostic process. And there's a lot of guidelines for neurocognitive assessments. I work very closely with visiting providers and with the tools that they have to use in order to establish dementia, to
Mhm.
establish a diagnosis. And they have pages of tools, and a consult to get to the dementia diagnosis can take up to 2 hours.
Right.
But it's
That's
just a
crazy.
gathering of information that doesn't lead to solutions. And I think that's the frustrating part of being the healthcare provider is that they're doing all they can to gather the information, they get to the diagnosis, but
Mhm.
what's next? Because what we just created is a list of problems to help us to get to a diagnosis, but that does not mean that that's going to help us solve the challenges that this person and their caregivers are having in their home. And
Mhm.
that's where the Botes analysis is connecting the dots, because we take it one step further and we look at individually, how does memory impact this person's journey? How does their orientation to their
Mhm.
environment allow them to be successful with following up on appointments or drinking water regularly or being involved in their self care? How does their ability to sequence steps in a task allow them to have quality when they're using the toilet or when they're brushing their
Right.
teeth, right? Or when they're fixing a meal? How distractible are they? Do they have the attention span? Can they even recognize the object or the activity and then be successful in connecting with it? So that's what we're after. And when you look at the Lily, for instance, that's a very high level person with early uh, cognitive decline. And Lily may even recognize something is wrong. I'm
Mhm.
not, I cannot, I'm losing gaps in my memory. I am not on time. I lose track of time. I consistently cannot remember information that people has just relayed to me. It's very hard for me to learn new complex information. So Lily is a perfect person where we can say, help support them, give them be a trampoline for them to help manage where they're at, right? What can we do to keep them safe and keep them connected? Make it a safe space where persons that live with neurocognitive decline can say, I need help, instead of covering it up, being afraid, be ashamed, thinking with anxiety that what's going to happen next to me, maybe they're going to take me out of my home if people know I'm struggling. So how can we make it a safe space and just talk about brain health?
Right.
And here is the memory bouquet. You're part of the memory bouquet club. We're going to create a space where we are going to support your brain health. We talk about heart health, we talk about
Mhm.
bladder health and bone health, but we don't talk as much as we should about brain health.
Isn't that interesting? It's amazing. There's so much out there about everything else, and now we're just getting into that world of learning about that.
It's just a starting point. I always felt I just want to have something, a baseline where people can start to have an informed conversation,
Mhm.
a safe conversation about, yes, I'm having a decline. How do I get help? Or if you're a caregiver, this is I always say it's like stepping into a dark room with a person living with dementia. I
Mhm.
step into their space, and sometimes there's just something new that day that I
Right.
didn't anticipate, I don't know how to deal with, and then it slowly becomes a burden. And how do we allow for a caregiver to have some it's a concept of what's happening here and how can I enter into my loved one's space and
Mhm.
still have connection and joy and hopefully give hope, right? There's hope in this whole journey. There's hope at each of these stages. There are hope for you as a caregiver and for your loved one to still be connected, to still have joy.
Yeah. And I love how you have the entry level of the dementia part of it, because I think a lot of people miss that part of it, and that's where actually all the anxiety ends up being. And the like we talked about the hiding of things, and you that early part is where you really want to focus in on that training and learning what is going on as a family member, and also individually, that I would think that the person who's going through it would need to, like, ac- accept and validate, okay, this is what's going on.
You're
And
so right, Jan. And at that early stages, even for a lily and a daisy, we can still learn new information. We can
Mhm.
still teach our persons on this journey to have new lifestyle habits. We can teach them how to be safe. We can teach them how to use, for instance, how to wear an alert system and why it's important. We can um, we can integrate alarms, reminders, the use of AI like Alexis, calendar use. There's so many compensatory techniques and technology that's available right now. And a lot of times our caregivers has this concept of dementia and they don't recognize that their loved one are still able to do certain pieces on their own. Either they don't recognize that that's a possibility or they're too fearful for their person's safety, that they don't allow them to
Right.
connect as much as they should, right? Which can
Mhm.
also cause that frustration and irritation on both parties. So through the memory bouquet, we help caregivers and the person living with dementia understand this is where my struggles are. This is how I can compensate or overcome those cognitive struggles. But here is where my skill sets are.
Yes,
And
thank you.
this is
Yeah.
how I can be engaged. Like, for instance, somebody like my mom with wonderful analytical skills still. She used to be a mathematician. She's lived dementia now for 18 years. Her short term memory is zero. So she cannot recall any short term information. However, she is able to maintain some long term information if it's valuable information that she's motivated enough to connect with, and that will make long term memories. She has wonderful analytical skills. So I love this little story where they had to renew their passports. My dad was looking at the passports and he needed to find the last date that they traveled to America. If you travel, you know that when you go through uh, immigration, that they were just going to stamp your book wherever, and sometimes they just stamp on top of each other, right? There's no rhyme or reason. So my dad quickly got very frustrated and said, I just cannot find it. It's not here. And we could not apply for their visa to come visit me this past year if we couldn't tell them when was the last time they entered and exited America. So my mom was sitting next to my dad and she said, what's going on? What do you need? And I said, now I'm in America, they're in South Africa. So we have this virtual conversation. I'm like, Mommy, please just look at the passport and see if you can find the dates. Would you know, within 5 minutes, she had found the entry dates and the exit dates because she has analytical skills.
Wow.
She has um, she has good focus and attention span, and she loves numbers. That's something that she did her whole
Yeah.
life. And so immediately she was able to translate that information, and she lives at the Daisy as a daisy. It's
Wow.
understanding where your person's strengths are still at so that you can include them in activities and tasks and make them feel valued, make them feel included, make them feel connected. And the secret is to limit the frustration and anxiety and set up the task or the environment so that they can be successful. And that looks different
Mhm.
as you journey from a lily to a daisy to a violet to a rose to the bouquet level, but it's not impossible.
Yeah. Glad you made this program. I find that a lot of um, the media tends to focus on just the negative part of the Alzheimer's and dementia. So the families just, like we've said, become very frustrated. The person who has it becomes fearful and agitated. And so it's wonderful that you're getting the word out there that there's ways to do this journey that's positive, that's joy, that they can have joy, they can be active. It's amazing.
I always say, that dementia, there's a lot of beauty and joy in dementia when we choose to focus on that. Um, Thus, the flower levels. My grandmother was a caregiver to my granddaddy, and he passed away when I was 14. So, a lot of that, what I know about the struggles, are in retrospect, right? But my grandmother loved flowers. That was her love language. And she had a green thumb and she had the most beautiful flowers all year round. So the flowers is kind of an ode to my grandmother and the wonderful caregiver that she was for my grandfather. Um, but what I did want to say is on that same level of beauty, and that this journey can be beautiful if we focus first off, if you stay in the moment with your person, if you know that this is not, they don't choose to be like this. Number one, they don't have a hidden agenda. If they are saying things to you that may not seem true, or consistent, just know that they're trying to do the best they can in this moment with the information that they have, right?
Right.
They're trying to cope with what's going on, with what they're able to process and remember in the moment. They're not lying to you, they're not trying to fool you, they're not making up stories. They're trying to be present in the moment the best that they can. That's something to keep in mind. The second thing that I wanted to say is that our persons living with dementia, they develop a superhero skill when they on their journey, and that superhero skill is in the amygdala. As they lose access to their frontal lobe, temporal lobe, occipital lobe, their amygdala stays fired up. So the amygdala is the emotional center. It's our survival center. It's where we still can experience music and color and emotions. This is where we see the frustration and the anxiety and the irritability if my needs are not met.
Exactly.
However,
Yeah.
if my needs are met, if I'm in an environment where I'm safe and where things are offered in an empathetic and joyous manner, my soul is going to mirror that. My
Yeah.
soul is going to soak that up and I'm going to give that back to you. And so that is the superpower of a person's living with dementia, especially once we transition from a daisy to a violet to a rose. That amygdala, that superpower becomes so accessible. That's where the art and the creativity um, of our persons become exposed.
Yeah.
And so, how how wonderful is it that we are allowed into the sacred of spaces because our brain is degenerating to a point where we only have left emotions, art, music, and color.
Mhm.
Um, and how can we use that to create a joy in our environment? So that's the hopeful message
Yeah.
with
And
dementia.
that comes to one of the questions I had. Our loved one has a meaningful and active environment and life. So part of your program, how do you get into that? Because obviously each person is individual, right? Not everyone's going to respond like your mom responded to something different. My grandmother played the piano, so she responded differently. Like we knew with the music that early on that made her happy and joyful, and it changed her from when she had bouts of agitation, and you would just put that music on. And
Anchored her in the here and now, right?
right, right.
That's what, and so that's the beauty. So let's find a sensory stimulation, meaning is it is it an animal that they can respond to in the here and now? Is it videos of grandchildren or family? Is it nature videos of mountains or seaside? Is it a walk outside and seeing and feeling sun and trees? Is it a cup of coffee that I love to share, right, with someone and conversation? Is it touch? So knowing that person, knowing their love language, and knowing what makes sense to them, and sometimes that change as they age, right? Or as they well, it changes for all of us as we age. That's
Right.
a given.
Yeah.
But it also changes as our sensory perception changes. So sometimes it is having a toolkit with a couple of different things in there that you know may work because everything is not ever going to work every time. And so knowing that you may, we call it unlocking the heart. That person's heart is still there. Dementia may steal our mind and some of our abilities to process information, but dementia is not going to steal our heart. And so if we have some of those things that our person still love, even if it's treats, if I have dementia one day, you will able to connect with me every time over a bowl of vanilla ice cream. So, so
Yeah.
what does it take to, and the big thing to remember is how can I meet my person where they're at validate what they're feeling, anchor them in the here and now with a joyful experience, even if it is eating a bowl of ice cream before we get in the shower, or having a shower and then we're going to have a bowl of ice cream, right?
Right.
So that's, of course, it can be more complex than that. And that's why we, as dementia consultants, come and lock arms with our communities to help our communities grasp where their person is at individually. But there's certainly some things like that, knowing your person's heart, and just
Mhm.
know they don't have an agenda, and meet them where they're at in the moment, even if it doesn't make sense to you that they're paranoid or fearful or crying. But meet them where they're at in that emotion, but don't let them stay there. Give them a sensory experience that's going to create joy, connect with their heart to help them anchor in what's real. And that is the one secret that I can share with our audience.
This program, we know who
Yes.
it's geared to, but who else do you provide it to? Families?
Yes, our audience is families, caregivers, person living with dementia, of course, home health agencies, to help their therapists have a tool to deliver a service that's evidence-based with interventions that's going to make a difference. Having these educational tools to leave behind with families. We train physicians, physician groups on how to use this tool to support the caregiver, support care plan decision making. This tool can be implemented in hospitals, in skilled nursing facilities. I like to call it the dementia language, where if I talk to you about a lily and somebody else who's familiar with this tool step into the conversation, and we're talking about a lily, that we all are coming from the same frame of reference of what that person needs to succeed in their environment. And so the beauty of this, even in a senior living facility, we have different materials. Once someone is staged, they get a flower above their door. And when a caregiver is moving through a senior living facility, just by looking at the flower, they are going to know, how do I talk to this person? What do they need from me? How do I set up the environment? How do I touch them? Or should I touch them? And how do I approach them face to face? Or can I have a normal conversation and not patronize? On a lily and a daisy? We need to be very careful not to patronize, because they can process information normal. But when I get to a violet and a rose, this person needs face to face, slow down, instructions that is simple, and you have to allow that person to respond to you because their processing is slower. So by having this roadmap available, we also have resources that allow caregivers to know, how do we engage during a meal, with eating, with bathing, with just general activities in the community. What should that look like? How do I set it up to engage the different persons on their journey at a different level? So setting up a community for success, but also for individuals, of course, helping that family and that person living with dementia understand, what do I need to put in place so that I can age in place at the most successful level for me.
I love that, putting it up at the door, above the doorway, so that you know what you're, because in the hospitals, we have different, you have different signs, fall risks, different things that you put so that you know what you're about to enter into. So
Yes.
that would be great to know that, to be like, okay, I have to either talk at a different level, or just a different type of communication for that person.
And also, if I have a daisy, I can put a meal in front of them and walk away, and they'll know to eat on their own. If I have a violet, I cannot do that. I have to open it up. I have to set them up. I have to make sure they can use the utensils. I have to encourage and supervise and make sure they finish their meal. And when I have a rose, I actually have to give hand over hand assistance. So I cannot just drop a meal off and walk away when somebody is in the hospital. It looks different for everybody. As far as hydration, I saw this with my mom. I cannot just leave the a jug of water on her bedside table and hope she's going to hydrate herself. I need to remind her throughout the day, every 2 hours, it's time to drink a cup of water. And then she'll go, oh, yes, of course. And she can pour a cup of water. But when I'm engaging with her, I might think, oh, she's great. She's talking to me. She can respond to me. She's processing the information correctly. But when I walk away, she's not going to remember what I told her.
Okay.
But when you have hospital personnel that's moving at that speed, they cannot make that decision in that moment. They're not equipped to do that. So
Right.
how can we help them understand where is this person at? And it's simple things like hydration, feeding. They cannot hit the call button. They're not going to be able to tell you if they had an accident in bed. It's those simple things that is going to impact outcomes for a hospital or for a family. And how do we help that hospital quickly engage, or the staff at the hospital quickly engage with that person at the right level and have the correct expectations.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it.
Wow. And that's you brought out some very good examples and some great points. So, where can we connect with you to be able to learn more about this program?
Well, you can go to our website, boatesmemorymethod.com. I'm also on all the different media platforms, LinkedIn, um, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. So
Oh, well.
please follow along YouTube. Uh, I am venturing into my own dementia consulting firm, Door of Hope Dementia Consulting, which we already have established LLC, but we will be able to spread the joy to
Yeah.
more people coming June of 2024. Um, but also, I host free webinars that families can join. So just look for the link on the website. I host memory support groups, a free memory support group once a month. You can look on the website and come join us for support. And we also connect with us where I have consulting times available. So if you have any questions or concerns, just book a consult through the website, and I will be happy to connect with you and see how we can lock arms with you on this journey.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. If you can mention one thing to family members, what would it be?
There is hope.
Yeah.
You are not alone. Um, and there is a community of people that want to love on you and help you and support you. Just ask for help. You're not alone. We were not made to do this alone. We were made to function as a community, and let us help you. And just seek resources. There is hope. That's the big message that I want to bring persons on a dementia journey is there's hope. I don't care who tells you what and what the doctor said or the neurologist or the neighbor, there is hope.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us and telling a little about your program.
Thank you,
Um,
Joanne. Thank you for
Thanks.
having me. It's so great to have people like you in the community that has such a passion. And I always say it doesn't take one person, it takes all of us to make a difference in dementia. And it's going to take all of us as a community to help support our seniors as dementia become more prevalent in our population in the future.
It's so true.